All right, this is practice test 80 of solving equations. And we'll have multiple step equations going mainly from 2-step equations to 3 or 4, even 5 steps. So problem number 1. Everything we do in an equation is to isolate the variable or try and get the variable by itself. So the whole idea is to try and get m by itself. Well, I've got a coefficient here that's being multiplied times it. I also have a constant over here on the right-hand side. I need to start by getting rid of the constant. It's hard to explain to students why we start there, but it is the correct order. One of the easiest ways is most of the time you're doing PEMDAS or order of operation in reverse. Typically you're starting with a plus or minus, unless the whole entire side is a fraction, and we'll see that in a few minutes. Another way to look at it is often you always start with a side that contains the variable, and usually the item you start with first is furthest away from the variable. Could be to the left or to the right, but it's usually an item that's by itself. So we'll start here with a constant, the plus 3. We need to subtract 3 from right here because we want to cancel it out. We want to eliminate it. And when we subtract 3 from this right-hand side, it will go away, leaving 2m on the right-hand side. Well, if we subtract 3 on the right-hand side, an equation has to stay balanced. So we must subtract 3 from the left-hand side as well. So 7 minus 3 is 4. So everything we've done up here is now gone. It's taken care of. Here's where we're at. And this is all we're concerned with. We're concerned right here. It's a brand new problem. And it's a one-step equation at this point. We have 2 times m. We need to undo that. Remember, we're always using inverse operation, which means you need to do the opposite of what they're doing. So if they're doing 2 times m, the opposite of multiplication would be division. You're going to divide on both sides, and you're going to divide by the same exact number that was being multiplied times the m. And the reason for that is 2 over 2 makes 1. In other words, they cancel each other out. And so if we divide by 2 on the right, we must divide by 2 on the left. 4 divided by 2 is 2. The only thing left on my right-hand side is m. You can rewrite this as m equals 2. Either one of these would be acceptable on the quiz. So 2 equals m or m equals 2. All right. So I'm going to go straight down the page because it's easier for me to scroll. So I'm going to problem number 3. Problem number 3, this entire left-hand side is a fraction. Remember, this is just the problem number. This is not part of the equation. The entire left-hand side right here is all a fraction. So I can't come in there and just subtract 1 from both sides because it's not really a 1. It's really a 1/2. It is part of the fraction. And this is x divided by 2. The way to solve this is to eliminate the fraction itself. And so if they're doing divided by 2, we use the inverse, and the opposite of dividing would be multiplying. So we're going to multiply by this exact number. So I'm just going to kind of write over this 3. We'll turn that into my 2. And we're going to multiply each side by 2. And the reason is because these will cancel each other out. This is really 2 over 1, and it will cancel out this divided by 2. They'll cancel the denominator. Well, I'm left with 1 plus x equals 9 times 2, which is 18. At this point, all I need to do is subtract 1. The reason I'm subtracting is that's a positive 1. So 1 minus 1 will make 0, and I'm trying to get rid of it. So they cancel each other out, and I'm left with x equals 17. That is the final answer. All right, problem number 5 has distributive property in it. We have to distribute this -2 times everything that's inside these parentheses. Now, I know coming from 7th grade, many of you look at this part right here different ways. First of all, -2 times 1 is -2. There's no argument about that at all. You need to get in the habit, though, of looking at this as a signed number. Stop looking at it as subtracting 7r. And you need to start moving to the idea that it is a -7r. Because in equations, a negative and a subtraction are the same thing. They have the same effect and they mean the same thing. So the best way to view this is -2 times -7 would be positive 14r. Now I know many of you Don't do that yet. Many of you are coming from 7th grade here at Veterans, and in the 7th grade, not just here, but in the 7th grade in general, it teaches you that you would have a subtraction, and then you would do -2 times a +7, which would be -14R. Well, remember, anytime you have minus a negative, automatically, as soon as you see that, minus a negative, you should never have two symbols there. Minus a negative is automatically going to turn into a plus. So we can eliminate all of that confusion of that minus a negative if we just view this as -2 times -7 to begin with, which is +14R, equals 110. The next step is to eliminate the -2. The opposite of -2 or -2 is to add 2. We do that on both sides. They cancel, we're left with 14R equals 112. Divide by 14, divide by 14. They cancel, you're left with R. And 14 into 112, what is that? 8, I believe. All right, that is 8. So R equals 8. Okay. Problem number 7. So I've got -110 equals 2 parentheses 1 minus 7a parentheses. All right, so it's a distributive property problem. And so first thing we need to do is distribute that 2. So once again, I want you to go ahead and look at this like it is a signed number, okay? Look at that as a -7a. It's just going to be easier if we do it that way. So I've got -110. 2 times 1 is 2. And then 2 times a -7 would be negative or minus, either one. Remember, it's the same thing. You're just going to put one of those symbols, just one of them, just one. 14a. At this point, you don't really have to call it, doesn't matter if you call it -14a or -14a. Same effect, same answer at the end. All right, I need to get rid of the 2. So -2, -2. So I have negative, remember -110 is way to the left on the number line, and you're going 2 places further to the left. So that's -112 equals -14a. All right, so at this point I want to divide each side by -14. Remember, you get rid of -14 times a by dividing, because the opposite of multiplication is to divide, division. Same exact number. If it's negative, you're going to divide with a negative. All right, and so negative divided by negative is a positive answer, and 14 goes into 12 8 times. We just had that same number. So 8 equals a. Or you could say a equals 8. Okay? Number 9. So I notice number 9 right here, I have like terms. They're on the same side of the equal. That means they can be combined together. So this is the same as a -2 minus 6. Or you may see it as a -2 plus a -6. Either way, this is that same signs add and keep. All right, so this is going to be 2 minus 8a equals -3 minus 3a. So at this point I have variables on both sides. I have a's on both sides of the equal. I've got to get them all to the left or all to the right. It really doesn't matter which way you go. Both of them work. It's just that sometimes one way is easier for you. If I were to add 3 a's to both sides, these would go away, but I would still have a -5a on this side. I'm trying to avoid all those negatives if possible. Well, what if I add 8a to this side? It'll go away. And if I add 8a to this side, I'll have +5a. +5a sounds a lot better. So let's do that. I'm going to add 8a Gonna add a on this side of the equals. Remember, the equal is your dividing line. You gotta do whatever you do on one side, you do the other. Remember, you can only add and subtract a's from other a's. You can never do it from a regular number. So now I have 2, those cancel, equals -3, and then -3 plus 8. Okay, that you can reverse that and say 8 minus 3. It wouldn't change anything at all. You have positive 5a. All right, so at this point I want to get rid of the -3 because I'm trying to get a by itself. This -3 is in my way, so I'm doing the opposite of -3, which is +3. Last step, 5 times a, I undo that with division. So I divide by 5, and I find that 1 equals a, or a equals 1. Either way. Problem number 11. Need to go ahead and distribute right here. So we got 4 plus 24n. All right, on this side, just bring down 38 plus 7n. All right, once again, kind of asking myself, is it better for me to subtract 7 from both sides and keep it positive, or should I subtract 24n from both sides and it goes negative? I'm going to do what's easier for me, which is to subtract 7n from both sides. It does cancel. On the left, I'm left with 38. On the right, I've got 4 plus 17n. Goes 24 minus 7, 17. At this point, I want to subtract 4. That's my constant. I want to get rid of that. 34 equals 17n. Divide by 17. Divide by 17. All right. 2 equals n, or n equals 2. All right, scroll up and over. Problem number 2. All right, so there is a fraction in it, but I also have a constant. I need to attack the constant first, so I'm going to do plus 1, plus 1. All right, these cancel, and I'm left with a divided by 3 equals -3 plus a positive 1 is -2. Well, I need to undo the divided by 3. The opposite of dividing by 3 is multiplying by 3. You need to use parentheses in your equations for the multiplication, okay? That indicates multiplication. Line it up about even with your fraction because you're eliminating these two items. It's a whole number 3 times this fraction because this is really 3 over 1, which will eliminate that denominator. You're left with just a. -2 times 3 is simply -6, so you're finished. A equals -6. Problem number 4. Want to subtract 9 from both sides. 126 minus 9, 115. No, sorry. 26, take away 117. Sorry, 117. And I'm left with 9n on the right hand side. Last step is just divide by 9, divide by 9. So 117 divided by 9. I'm going to look and see what that was. I don't remember. 13 equals n. All right. Problem number 6. Distributive property. 7 times 8 is 56. 7 times 5 is 35m. 266. I need to subtract this 56 right here. Alright, those cancel. left with 35m on the left. 266 minus 56, 210. Divide both sides by 35. M equals, I'm thinking it's about 5, maybe, let's see, 6. It goes in there 6 times. M equals 6. Alright, number 8. Got to distribute. So 162 equals negative 6 times 6x is negative 36x. Negative 6 times a positive 3 is going to be minus 18. I know here some of you like to do plus a negative 18. Writing this as plus minus 18 is going to get pretty confusing for you as you go forward. You need to just eliminate that and have one sign. Okay, the negative sign is going to override your plus, so you should just write it as minus 18 or negative 18. It's just easier that way. It keeps it a little bit more simple. I want to add 18 to both sides because I want to get rid of a minus 18 or a negative 18. The opposite sign would be plus 18. So 188, or sorry, 8, 9, 10, 6, 7, 8, 180. Equals negative 36x. Divide both sides by negative 36. Remember, negative 36, because that's what it was to start with. So I know I'm going to have a negative answer. And that particular problem is negative 5x. Negative 5 equals x, which also could be written as x equals negative 5. All right. Problem number 10. Got like terms right here that can be combined. So I've got 10 plus 3n equals 4. Take away 3 is simply just 1n or n. You may want to put a 1 there to help yourself. Alright, so I've got variables on both sides. I've got to get them all to one side. I'm going to subtract 1n. This is where many of you make a mistake. Sorry, I made a mistake right there. Minus 1n. Minus 1n. 10 comes down. 3 taken away 1 is just 2n. Right here, 1n take away an n is 0. You have to put that 0 placeholder in there. And you do not stop. Many of you do this. You get right here and you start focusing on this and you just go ahead and you start dividing. Notice, if you've done this, there's not even an equal sign in the problem. It's no longer an equation. There's no equation if there's no equal sign. Please don't do that. Keep that equal sign in there. Put that 0 placeholder in there and keep working. We've got to get rid of the 10, so we subtract 10 from both sides. Guess what? You can actually do 0 minus 10. Yep, it's amazing. We have these things called negative numbers. 0 minus 10 is negative 10. Divide both sides by 2. And we find that n equals negative 5. Okay? Alright, need to distribute here. So 3 times 6 is 18. 3 times negative k or minus k is going to be negative 3k. You may call that minus 3k, but if you call that minus as a subtraction symbol, you need to know that that symbol is going to stay with that 3k all the way down. Okay, it doesn't go away. Many of you just somehow halfway through the problem, it's just gone. I don't know how. It is locked into that 3k. All right. So right now, you got to decide, do I add 2k to both sides and this one goes away but this one stays negative, or do I add 3k's to both sides and this one goes away and this one turns positive? I like the idea of the positive, so I'm going to add 3k to both sides, because remember, this is a negative 3k or a subtract 3k. You do the opposite, which is to add. Negative 2 plus a positive 3 is just a 1k or k. These are eliminated, we're left with 18. At this point, we need to subtract 21 to get k by itself. We find that k equals negative 3. All right, I hope this helps.